Are on chapter 12, Man Woman Equality. This chapter is addressed to the many advanced thinkers who are fully aware of the great world danger which civilization is now facing. All such mystic thinkers also know that civilization need not fall if we but know how to unite mankind into one being with but the one purpose of manifesting the love principle of nature instead of the fear and hate principle which he now manifests. God's universe is balanced. That is why it is unified and continuous. That is why it will endure forever and cannot fall. Man's universe is badly unbalanced. That is why it is disunited and transient. That is why it must repeatedly fall. When grave danger confronts anyone or the world, one wants to know what to do about it. If he does not know what to do to save himself, he is helpless to avoid the danger. World thinkers can save civilization if they know more about God's ways and process, which alone can save man if applied in time. The great cause of world unbalance is the disunity caused by the practice of inequality in God's divided pairs, which he created equal. These inequalities are many. They could not be balanced in centuries, and that would be too late. The principal inequality, which is again destroying civilization, is the man-woman inequality. That is the prime cause of world failure, which underlies all other causes. That cause could be remedied in time to unite the whole world as one if world thinkers, both men and women, would do something about it now, right now, before the next election takes place, and not 20 years from now. The world resists change. It insists upon continuing the same old mistakes until the resultant suffering becomes too heavy. It has got to change, however, in respect to its man-woman equality, or be self-condemned to another state of chaos. The world cannot change unless individuals change. Each man must equalize woman spiritually in his own life, in his home, his business, and his government. Until woman is thus exalted, the tensions of inequality will destroy every civilization which man attempts to build alone. Every woman should insist upon mental equality with men in all governing and managerial capacities, and when competent women are nominated for high office, I am confident men would feel it their duty and pleasure to vote for them to begin equalization of international affairs. I say this because each time I have mentioned this man-woman idea to a great man, he has wholeheartedly and enthusiastically been in accordance with this principle. It will always be impossible for humans to build an enduring civilization until it equalizes its man-woman mind power. If world thinkers would but realize that, they would be aroused to action in beginning to bring equalization into being. God created this world for men and women, not for men alone, nor for women alone. He created them equally as mates, just as he created all pairs and all forces equally. This is an electrically sex-divided universe. The two electrical workers which create this universe are male and female. Each are equal. One does as much as the other in creating every particle of matter in the universe. Without that electrical equality and expressed force, we would have a very wobbly and dangerously unbalanced universe of badly distorted forms. We will continue to have a badly distorted, disunited, and wobbly civilization until men and women, world thinkers, begin to equalize the two sexes so that there can be a marriage of unity in the world which will produce balance in world actions instead of distortions. Motherless children vitally need a mother. No matter how sincerely or eagerly your father tries to become both mother and father, he is never able to fulfill both necessities. This motherless world likewise needs a mother. The father is trying to fulfill both offices, but the more he tries to function as both, the greater is the disaster to the world family. In man's primate days, physical survival was the first import in his consideration. The necessity of fighting for that survival to procure food fell to the male. He was the strongest and more free, for children must be cared for while men hunted. Food had to be prepared, and skins and rushes had to be made into body coverings. That part of the work naturally fell to the woman. As the centuries passed, man, the hunter of game for food, quite naturally became man, the conqueror of men for their possessions, and women became the household drudge, the tiller in the field, and the slave of man, her lord and master. Man alone was free. Woman did what her lord and master told her to do. For long ages, woman had no such status as wife. She was man's concubine. For long ages, one of many concubines. Men enclosed her in harem prisons under eunuch guards, where she was still slave among slaves, and never a wife who could freely walk the earth like her master. And even when she was allowed to walk the earth, she walked behind her master or under watchful eyes. Her value to man and her status with him was purely physical. Man eventually discovered woman as a mental mate and took her to wife and consulted with her, but condescendingly. From that first step in the recognition of matehood of woman by man, the whole status of civilization gradually rose to higher and still higher levels. The country which gave the greater recognition to the matehood idea of man and woman progressed rapidly beyond those countries which glorified man and suppressed their women. Likewise, every individual man who learned to love a woman because of her mental matehood with him, as well as her physical, progressed beyond all men who looked upon her as woman alone. Notwithstanding these first discoveries of woman's mental worth to man, which made her more and more his companion and freed her from man's guardianship, man still was the master, the Lord, the one who must be obeyed, and that which woman gained in man's world was but a concession, not a right. When woman demanded an equal right to vote, she gained only a concession as an appeasement. She never gained a right in man's eyes, nor has she ever gained equality. She but gained the right to vote for man. Pagan man made man the master of women and ruler of the world. Even the pagan God concept was male and still is. God the Father has never been the generally accepted father-mother of his equally divided fathers and mothers of creation. Man the conqueror, the killer of man for the possessions of man, the pirate and trader and slaves, the exploiter and builder of empires, built this world in his own carnal image. He built it for man and glorified himself as the killer of the sons of man, while women wept. Man has always crucified love on the cross of his own self-glory by the killing of men, and women have always wept at the foot of the cross as they wept when men crucified the Nazarene, while all but one of his disciples who professed to love him deserted him. All of this is quite natural. It could hardly be otherwise, for man in his unfolding or evolving remembered the fighter spirit of his primate days of taking, while not realizing that the woman spirit of giving was gradually awakening in him a keener desire for mental mating and the spiritual unity of the equal father-mother of balanced mating. The hardest lesson which man must learn during the long ages of his journey is that God made man and woman equal with one another in order that they should manifest divided love by equal interchange in their givings and regivings. God's whole purpose for dividing his spiritual self into pairs of fathers and mothers is to dramatize his love nature by the romance of equal and opposite interchange of love. The romance of awakening love is far greater than either its mental or physical interchange. Every expression of mating is empty without the romance of love itself. Romance is love awareness, without which there can be no complete happiness in any mating. The cosmic drama of creation is a romance which all mankind is perpetually transforming to comedy and tragedy as it eternally seeks romance without knowing the path which leads to it. Through the romance of balanced interchangings of love between fathers and mothers, they find unity which alone gives to them the ecstasy of the divine nature of God. Physical sex interchange has been first in the desires of mass man. Mental sex interchange is rare, while romance starves in a world which would give all else for just 1 hour of it. That is the lesson of life which all must learn who search for the peace and happiness which alone bring rest from world tensions. The world has never learned it because the senses of man have never let him know the real meaning of either love or romance. The world of divided humans must someday know that God's divided universe is an electrically sex-divided dramatization of cause and effect. The cause is mind desire for expressing static idea through interchanging motion. The effect is what happens because of that division and the necessity of interchanging. Cause is, therefore, one, and effect is always two. The lesson of life is to learn how to so balance the interchanging between the two halves of every effect that all effect is completely canceled out in complete sexlessness by their balanced unit. God's motive as master playwright of his cosmic drama is the love urge of the mating idea expressed physically by the uniting of bodies to void the physical tensions of the sex urge by balancing them and thus reproduce other bodies. It is also for the purpose of expressing the love urge in its mental and spiritual expression by eliminating the mental tensions of separateness. This is accomplished by uniting spiritual mates for creating spiritual idea. A mental sex relation is for the purpose of creating idea, while the physical sex relation is for the purpose of creating body forms of mentally conceived ideas. That is why any woman and any man who have harmonious spiritual relations with each other, such as a mother and son, or good friends or business partners, can multiply power in each other very much more than any two men or any two women could possibly do. That is why any organization which consists solely of men, whether it be an industry, a club, or the cabinet of the President of the United States, or of other organizations composed of women alone, necessarily creates unbalanced structures in which there can never be complete unity. This is why this man-made world is so badly unbalanced and disunited. Its male qualities are so preponderant that it has made a civilization which operates like a flywheel whose shaft is badly off-center. A woman-made world would be just as unbalanced. Its preponderance of female qualities would make it equally disunited. There is no other motive to the love story of creation than the mental and physical manifestation of the love urge by unity of mind and unity of body, which can only be attained through balanced thought interchange, which is of the first import, and body interchange, which completes the unification, but is of secondary importance. If you look into the life history of any great man, you will find a woman in it who had a tremendous influence upon the creative powers, which accounted for his greatness. It may be more than one woman, such as his mother and his wife or sweetheart or dearly loved friend. No matter who that woman or those women were, the basis of their interchange with him must first be love mentally expressed. A spiritual union between any man and woman is of 10,000 times more value than love physically expressed without the spiritual. Love is not objective, nor can it be possessed. The woman awakens love in the man, and the man awakens love in the woman. The romance of it is in the awakening, not in the consummation. It is the awakened ability to love which counts, and not the acquisition of the object which has awakened it, nor in any physical contact whatsoever. A woman may not even be aware that she is deeply loved, and the man who loves may never even exchange a word with her. Where love is spiritual, it uplifts, exalts, enriches, and ennobles. Where sex is purely physical, it debases and defiles. Millions have ruined themselves through physical expression which is not spiritually balanced. The roux is despised where the parent is honored. Whole civilizations have been utterly destroyed by the sex debauchery of incest and promiscuity. Wherever spiritual sex mating is preponderant over the physical, there is then the beauty and glory of the power which men and women can alone know, who have that unity which comes to those whom God hath joined together. Any man and woman who are thus spiritually and physically balanced multiply their unified power by 8, not 2. Two separate, disunited potentials are only 2, but when 2 potentials act as 1, their power multiplies in the ratio of the cube. In other words, when 2 completely united, balanced mates act as 1, they do not add their 2 powers together to equal 2. They multiply them in the ratio of gravitation mathematics, which are 3-dimensional. There is no lesson so hard to learn or of such great import as the long lesson of learning how to interchange all spiritual and physical divisions of effect equally in order to unify them and thus make 2 unbalanced conditions become 1. A balanced life, home, business, community, nation, or world of nations is possible only by learning that great lesson by the hard way of experience until it is put into practice. An approximation of balance will not suffice for complete happiness. A man who still insists upon being master in his own home cannot have a happy home even though he provides for his family generously and is a model husband in every other aspect. With such a condition, contentment is possible, but romance is utterly stifled. A residue of unbalance still remains, which makes it impossible to cancel out all actions and reactions by balancing them as a businessman balances his books constantly. A business could not succeed if a daily deficit made it impossible to balance its books, nor can a family succeed in being all that a family should where a constant tension exists which cannot be utterly avoided or utterly voided. The wife would try to assure herself she was happy by seeing the good points in her husband. Something would constantly be happening which would not happen if the home was a balanced one. A daughter might marry against her better judgment because of the tension which could not be eliminated, or a son might leave home where he otherwise would not. Unity cannot exist where tensions hold 2 apart. They will always be 2 until residual tensions are balanced. The 2 will then be 1. In countries where their women are forced to accept infidelities as a matter of course, there can never be the happy home life enjoyed by those nations where infidelities are the exception and not the rule. Under such conditions, unity is utterly impossible because romance is impossible. No great achievement of world import ever comes from countries where women are openly denied any approach to equality with men, and they stand still for centuries. Physical interchange with women, unaccompanied with mental interchange, holds a nation to a physical level just as it does with an individual. Neither individuals nor nations are ever progress through physical interchange alone. Miscegenation ruined Greece. Phallic worship ruined many cities and countries, while homosexuality, which resulted from unbalanced conditions, created many a Sodom and Gomorrah. Within the last 50 years, countries like Turkey, Lebanon, Egypt, Iran, and Japan, which gradually added to the status of woman by giving her greater dignity, progressed very rapidly from almost static levels. The countries which have risen to the highest levels in culture, invention, science, industry, and engineering are the ones in which its women interchange mentally with men as well as physically. Middle Europe and the United States have given almost all of the world's great achievements to the world, while the Slavs, Mongols, Arabs, and other Asiatic and African nations have given practically none of it. Whatever scientific, engineering, industrial, or inventive advancement has come to Slav countries has been subsidized from Anglo-Saxon countries. The advancement of women to mental esteem has been encouraging, but there has been too little of man-woman equality in high places, such as industry and government. In these important departments of life, the world is still a man's world, made by man for man and in man's image. It is not a peaceful world or a united one in any of its many departments, and it never will be as long as it is a man-made world. Until women become the acknowledged mental equal of man and share with him the executive management of industrial and national responsibilities, it will be impossible to have an enduring civilization of happy, peaceful, successful people. An unbalanced civilization is as operatively impossible as it would be for a man to continually walk and work while even 3 degrees away from perpendicular. Wherever one sees world and national affairs being discussed and weighed for decisions which affect all peoples, both men and women, you see great rows of men occupying the seats of judgment as to how the world must act. Everyone is familiar with pictures of man-made groups in such high places as Senate and congressional gatherings, the great conferences of the United Nations, the international assemblies, at world conferences, the English Parliament, or the cabinet of the President of the United States. With but few exceptions here and there, all these managers of world affairs are men, all engaged in making a man's unbalanced world, which is as divided against itself as man and woman are divided against each other in a home where man is master in his own house. I am quite sure that present-day man has not given serious thought to this man-woman equality in high places, especially here in the United States where men revere their women so highly. I feel that those thinking ones who read this book and remembering the great import of their wives in their work will do all in their power to commence what could be the greatest movement the world has ever known. This action would be the spiritual rebirth the world is seeking, in which all thinking men have been desiring to come into being to save it. Our present state of world affairs is not in harmony with God's one law. That means that the whole human race is endeavoring to build a civilization by working against God instead of working with Him. It is a defiance of God's command which nature will not tolerate. Man alone can never manifest his Creator. Every creation of God or man springs only from unity, not from separateness. Creation stems only from united father-motherhood. Man can no more create an enduring civilization without woman than he can create a baby without woman. All ideas of the mind, as well as all created bodies which manifest mind, must have a mother as well as a father. The great error of man in this respect lies not so much in selfishness and ego as it does to the holdover of his pagan memory of woman's value to him as being purely physical. Until man and woman can equalize their mental relations and work together for spiritual unity, a balanced civilization is impossible. We have long heard the hackneyed phrase that woman's place is in the home. To organize, beautify, and manage a home requires a great deal of executive ability, which women perform with great credit when they must do it alone, but gloriously so when mates work together. Women have been called upon in war emergency measures and asked to fill places unfamiliar to them, places which none but men have ever filled. They not only did the work with equal skill and merit, but very often with greater efficiency than men. When women fought for equal suffrage, one of the most familiar criticisms used to ridicule the idea of women as voters was the claim that they would vote for the man who had nice curly hair rather than the one who had brains. Then there was the ridicule of women as statesmen or as industrial director. What would a woman know about government? What would she do in a conference of trained diplomats? Looking upon the results of our all-men world conferences since the end of World War I, is it not fair to ask if the present dreadful plight the world finds itself in could not have been avoided if the balancing influence of women's spiritual nature had been present? Every man and woman must realize that it is not in woman's nature to kill, for her purpose on earth is to give life, not take it. Our present unbalanced civilization is scientifically impossible to endure. It is fast disintegrating even now, and its decay has accelerated very dangerously since 1900. It is so badly unbalanced in so many departments and institutions that any attempt to balance all of them simultaneously would not be effectual, besides which there is not time to do it that way. The most necessary and the most helpful one of the unbalanced conditions is man-woman equalization. This essential to world happiness could become a living flame which would illumine the whole world with a new light if every woman started immediately to do something about it, aided by every man who believed in it. Such a movement can succeed only if organized into strength of numbers. One alone can do but little, but if everyone joined together in a multiple one unit of 20 million or more before the next election, it might be quite possible to make the first great step in that direction by electing many women senators and congressmen, women, and even the vice president for the next presidential term. Such a world innovation adopted in this country would arouse the whole world of women in other countries where such an innovation would be impossible at the present time. This country should lead the world in this respect as it has in so many respects. The way to do this speedily and powerfully is for you and every woman everywhere to call a few friends together and form themselves into a unit and the Man-Woman Equalization League. It must be started by women, but every man who is in sympathy with the movement should become an equal member of it. Every truly great man will immediately realize its import and become an enthusiastic working member of it. That unity is its very purpose. Perhaps 5 other women in your town will have done the same thing the same day. You will hear of it if they have. That is news for your local newspaper. Then amalgamate and call a town meeting to become a chapter and elect leaders. When you have become a chapter, register your chapter by its town name with this foundation, which will act as co-coordinator for nationalizing the movement. Groups formed in large cities can register their many chapters by district. Other towns which have done the same thing will grow into county chapters, then state chapters, in the same way that national service clubs like Rotary, Kiwanis, and Lions have become national. The appeal for this organization is so strong its growth would become millions. In 1 year, if every woman would but realize that women have the power to save the world from another chaos by merely asserting themselves as equal inheritors of the earth and of the business of managing all earthly affairs equally with men. When the movement has become national, inspired leaders will be born from the movement who will strengthen it by becoming great national leaders. Then will be the time for issuing a publication which will be a power in affecting the votes of all the nation upon the platform of equal representation. When women once realize the saving power which is theirs and the responsibility which is theirs, this movement will become the mighty crusade which it ought to be. The only qualification for membership in this new national organization should be a manifestation of belief in it by work performed in its behalf. A signed pledge of allegiance to a principle might be required for membership, but work performed and support given are of first importance. It is hardly necessary to call your attention to the power which is vested in so many million votes. Unless something of this nature is initiated at once, we shall go farther and further into the chaos which a man-made world is so fast falling into. It is scientifically impossible for peace and happiness to come to such an unbalanced world as this is, where the physical values are so preponderant over spiritual values. We have either got to balance the father-mother basis of creation or perish over and over again until we do balance it. I therefore say to every woman who reads this book, will you start today to dedicate yourself to this world's service? I also say to every man, will you help woman to give birth to this man-woman equalization movement for world unification and peace, and become a member of the Man-Woman Equalization League. A tremendous responsibility rests upon the shoulders of every thinking man and woman in this hour of grave danger.